I gave my 20s to concrete and steel. While my friends were backpacking through Europe or building startups in their garages, I was knee-deep in rebar and balance sheets. My name's Ryan Mitchell. For 10 years, I ran the day-to-day operations of Mitchell & Sons, my family's construction business in Fort Worth. Only it turns out the & Sons part? That was just branding. I worked 80-hour weeks, skipped vacations, missed weddings, birthdays, and whole relationships because I believed in one thing: legacy. My dad, Rick, started the company in the late 80s with nothing but a borrowed truck and a dream. I figured if I worked hard enough, I'd earn my seat at the table. I was wrong, because while I was out winning city contracts, managing payroll, keeping the whole machine from falling apart, my dad and my younger sister Paula were having meetings without me. The kind of meetings that required a lawyer and a notary. I didn't find out the truth from them. Of course not. I found out from a junior accountant who accidentally CC'd me on an internal email titled "Ownership Transfer Finalized." 75%. That's what they gave Paula. She'd worked maybe 8 months total in the company, mostly part-time, mostly from her yoga studio. I remember just staring at the screen, unable to breathe. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. That night, I didn't throw a fit. Didn't storm into anyone's office. I just packed up my things and walked out. And the funny thing about silence? It echoes a lot louder than shouting. No one chased after me when I left. Not my father. Not Paula. Not even a courtesy "you okay?" from one of the board members I'd helped bring in. I didn't even leave a note. Just walked out of the site office on a Wednesday afternoon with nothing but my truck keys and the sandwich I never got around to eating. Drove past the job site on County Line where crews were waiting on revised permits only I knew how to expedite, and just kept driving. I didn't answer calls. I didn't return emails. Not that there were many. They'd made their decision. And I was done pretending to be part of something that clearly didn't include me. You know what happens when you pull the keystone from a load-bearing arch? It doesn't crack. It collapses. Within 2 weeks, Mitchell & Sons was hemorrhaging clients. One of the city contracts got revoked over compliance issues. The foreman from our Galveston job walked after nobody could approve change orders. Suppliers started demanding upfront payments. Cash flow dried up. Paula, bless her, tried to step in with her buzzwords and organic leadership style. She scheduled weekly alignment meetings. Started wearing a hard hat to site visits like it meant something. And my dad? He went quiet. Probably thought this was a phase I'd snap out of. I didn't. Instead, I got some sleep. Ate meals that weren't from gas station microwaves. Took long walks with no phone in my pocket. I watched the company unravel from a distance like someone observing a demolition, slow at first, then all at once. And somewhere in that stillness, I realized something. They hadn't just taken the company from me. They'd freed me from it. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't coming back the same man they let walk out the door. It was a Thursday morning when my father finally called. I was at a diner on the east side, halfway through a plate of eggs that didn't come in a styrofoam box, when his name lit up on my screen: Rick Mitchell. For a second, I just stared at it. My thumb hovered over decline longer than I cared to admit. I picked up. "Ryan," he said, voice low, like he was gearing up for a negotiation. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything. Just waited. There was a pause, the kind of pause that's less about thinking and more about swallowing pride. "Things aren't going well," he admitted finally. "We underestimated the transition." That was his word for it. Transition. Like they'd moved some files to a new server, not gutted me from the company I helped build. Still, I stayed quiet. "We need you back," he said. "You know the clients, the vendors. Nobody understands the ops side like you do." "Who owns the company now?" I asked flat. Another pause. "Legally, Paula holds 75, but Then talk to your majority owner," I cut in. "Sounds like it's her company." I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head, trying to pivot. "It was never meant to be a slight," he said. "We just thought." "No," I interrupted, "you didn't think. You assumed I'd always be there, no matter how deep you cut me." I could feel my heartbeat picking up. Not from anger, from clarity. "I'm not asking you to crawl back," he said. "I'm asking you to help save what we built." "What you built?" I corrected. "You made that pretty clear." He didn't argue. "Look, Ryan, let's meet. Talk face to face. Maybe there's a way to make this right." For a second, I considered it. Then I said, "I'll meet. But I'm not coming back as a son looking for a seat." Silence again. "I'm coming as a partner," I said. "And I come with terms." The meeting wasn't at the office. I made sure of that. We met at a neutral spot, an old contractors club downtown where the wood paneling smelled like sawdust and cigarette ash from a decade ago. A place where egos couldn't hide behind titles or corner offices. Dad showed up in his usual Mitchell & Sons windbreaker, the one with the faded logo across the back. It used to mean something to me. Now it just looked like an old patch sewn over a deep wound. He shook my hand like nothing had happened. I didn't return the favor. Paula was there too, sitting stiffly across the table, trying to look confident. But I knew her tells, the way her fingers drummed the table, the way she blinked too often. She was nervous. She should have been. Let's cut to it, I said, not wasting time. If you want me back, here's what it takes. I slid a folded sheet of paper across the table. My father didn't touch it. Paula did. She read it quickly, then slower the second time. I didn't need to explain. I'd laid it out clearly. 40% ownership stake in the company, non-dilutable. Equal decision-making power in all financial and operational matters. Title change to co-managing director. And one more clause, no override from family hierarchy. Business decisions were to be based on merit, not blood. You're serious, she said finally. I nodded. Dead serious. Dad leaned back, exhaling like he'd taken a punch. You're asking to restructure the company. I'm offering to save it, I replied. But I'm not coming back to play second fiddle. Not to someone who's only here because her last business was a juice bar that couldn't pass a health inspection. Paula bristled. That's not fair. Neither was stealing my legacy, I said. We sat in silence for a long moment. I could see the calculations behind their eyes. Pride versus survival. Control versus collapse. Then my father did something I didn't expect. He nodded. We'll talk to the lawyers, he said. Do that, I replied, standing up. And make it quick. I'm not waiting forever. I walked out without shaking hands. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't begging to be seen. I was demanding to be counted. The paperwork took a month. For weeks of silence, red lines, back and forths between lawyers who spoke in clauses and contingencies. Every comma was a battlefield. Every percentage point a reminder that this wasn't just about money, it was about respect. Or more accurately, the lack of it that had defined my life under the Mitchell name. When the final draft came through, it was exactly what I'd asked for. Well, almost. They tried to sneak in a review clause, basically a time bomb that would give them the power to renegotiate my role after 2 years pending performance metrics. I sent it back with one line in red ink, you don't get to reassign your spine mid-walk. They dropped it. The day we signed, my father looked older than I remembered. Maybe it was the weight of watching his empire crumble under the daughter he thought could do no wrong. Or maybe he finally saw me not as his son, but as a man who could have built something greater if he hadn't been shackled to the Mitchell legacy. Paula showed up late to the signing. No eye contact. No apology. Just a signature and a muttered, let's hope this works. Hope wasn't part of my plan. I wasn't coming back to hope anything. I came back to build again, but this time on my terms. First thing I did? Fired 2 project managers who spent more time in strategy alignment than actual job sites. The second? Reinstated the systems I'd built, the ones Paula had scrapped in favor of productivity apps and motivational posters. Third? I took the plaque off the front door that read Mitchell & Sons. I replaced it with one that said Mitchell Construction Group. Because if this thing was going to rise again, it wasn't going to do it on the back of some outdated fantasy of family unity. It was going to rise with structure. And this time I'd be the one pouring the foundation. Paula didn't say a word about the name change. But I saw it in her eyes the first time she walked past the new sign on the office door. Like a line had been drawn, not in chalk, but concrete. We shared a title now. Equal partners on paper. But the air between us? Still thick with old resentment and newer wounds that hadn't scabbed over yet. At first, she kept her distance. We'd pass each other in the hallway like strangers who used to know each other in a past life. She stuck to finance meetings, strategy calls, and the parts of the business that looked good on LinkedIn. Left me to handle job sites, subcontractors, and the fire drills nobody else wanted to touch. Fine by me. Truth is, I didn't trust her. Not yet. Not after what they pulled. But a funny thing started to happen once the dust settled. She stopped trying to prove she belonged and started asking questions. Why'd we go with Keene Brothers on the East Ridge project, she asked one morning, coffee in hand, no camera crew around. Because they know how to fix mistakes without pretending they didn't make one, I said. She nodded, then actually came to the next progress meeting on-site, steel-toe boots, clipboard, and no makeup. For the first time, she didn't talk. She listened. And for the first time, I saw a version of Paula that wasn't just our father's favorite in a borrowed hard hat. I saw someone trying. Fumbling? Yeah, but trying. We weren't a team yet. Not even close. But the first crack in the ice? It showed up there between rebar inspections and a 20-minute argument over whether to switch HVAC suppliers. Sometimes progress looks like a signature. Sometimes it looks like two people silently agreeing not to draw blood in front of the crew. It was a Thursday when Paula showed up to the foreman roundtable. Not dialed in from her office. Not patched in via Zoom. She walked into the warehouse conference room in work boots and jeans, clutching a yellow legal pad like she actually planned on using it. Every head turned. These were guys who'd built their entire careers on the steel and sweat of fieldwork. To them, Paula had always been the other Mitchell, the one who once tried to organize a Wellness Wednesday initiative right in the middle of budget season. So when she sat down, there was a visible ripple of tension. I gave her a look that said, "You sure?" She gave a tight nod that said, "Try me." So I did. Midway through the meeting, we hit a sore spot: supplier delays and cost overruns on the West Loop build. I expected her to defer or deflect. Instead, she leaned in and said, "We approved a supplier based on old pricing structures. That's on me. Let's fix it, not spin it." Silence. Then Mike, one of our oldest crew leads, gave her the closest thing to a compliment he's ever handed out. Fair enough. It wasn't a win. Not yet. But it was a dent in the old reputation. A crack in the wall she'd helped build between herself and the people who actually wore the Mitchell name in sweat. Later that day, she knocked on my door, something she'd never done before. "You looked surprised I took the hit," she said. I admitted. Wasn't expecting accountability before lunch. She smirked. "I'm not trying to be your enemy, Ryan." "No," I said. "But you used to act like you were trying to be my replacement." That landed. Her eyes flicked to the window. "I didn't know what I was doing," she said quietly. "Still don't half the time." I leaned back in my chair. "Welcome to construction." She smiled, tired, genuine. For once, there was no angle in it. We didn't hug. Didn't toast to a new era. But when she left, I realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something more than a company. A month later, the books were balanced, the crew was stabilized, and for the first time in 2 years, nobody was threatening to walk off a site. The company was holding steady. Not thriving. Not yet. But breathing again, and this time with 2 sets of lungs instead of just mine. I started to notice things. Small things. Paula stopped ending every sentence with a buzzword. She listened more in meetings, especially when the guys from the yard spoke up. She even came up with a solution during a material shortage that saved us a week and 20 grand. Nothing flashy, just smart, quiet, practical. It reminded me of, well, me. Back before I burned out trying to prove I mattered. One morning, she dropped a binder on my desk, 3 inches thick, labeled Operational Review, Legacy Processes. "I think it's time we revisit some of the stuff I tried to replace too fast," she said. "You had systems for a reason." I didn't see it then. I flipped it open. Every single one of my site protocols, safety drills, even the old vendor maps I built by hand, scanned, indexed, and cross-referenced. "I didn't ask for this," I said. "I know," she replied. "But maybe part of leading is fixing what you broke." It wasn't an apology. It was better. And something in me started to shift. Not forgiveness, that was still a long way off. But something quieter. A willingness to build without watching my back every time I walked into a meeting. That afternoon, I walked past the job board and saw something I hadn't noticed before. A new job assignment list. My name next to Paula's. Co-leads. Not a power play. Not a trap. Just shared ground. I didn't say anything. Just stared at it a while. 10 years ago, I would have killed for that kind of recognition. Yeah? I just wanted it to mean something. The real test didn't come at a board meeting. It came at Sunday dinner. First one in over 6 months. Same oak table. Same roast chicken. Same awkward silence when I walked through the front door. My mother smiled too wide. Paula said, "Hey." Dad nodded once and poured himself a drink. Like we were all just one big happy company picnic waiting to happen. I sat across from him. No words. Just the clink of silverware on china. Halfway through the meal, Mom asked, "How's work going?" It was the first time that question didn't come with a landmine. I said, "Good. Stable. We're ahead of schedule on Garrison Avenue." Dad cleared his throat. "Heard you renegotiated the Mason contract. Got them back under budget." I looked up. His eyes were still sharp. Proud, but not the old kind of pride, not the "I built this, you should be grateful" kind. "I did," I said. He nodded. Smart move. That was it. No speech. No flashbacks to how he would have done it. Just acknowledgement. After dinner, Paula pulled me aside in the garage. "You handled that well." I shrugged. It wasn't a performance. "No," she said. "But it mattered." She leaned against the old tool chest, the one we used to fight over back when we thought family was just shared DNA and not shared damage. Dad's never going to say it, she added. But he knows now. What you carried. What it cost you. I didn't need to hear it from him. Hearing it from her was enough. Later that night, back at my place, I found myself looking at the old Mitchell & Sons mug I'd tossed in a drawer after I left. The logo was chipped. The handle cracked. I didn't throw it away. I just set it on the shelf. Some things don't need to be erased. They just need to be put in the right place. We got the Harwood Heights contract in early spring, one of the biggest mixed-use developments the city had greenlit in a decade. 5 buildings. Underground parking. Retail shells. A timeline so aggressive it felt like a dare. Old me would have taken the lead solo, micromanaged every pore and pivot until my eyes bled. But this time I handed half of it to Paula. Not out of charity. Out of trust, the earned kind. We split it down the middle. I handled ground-up construction, she ran the logistics and vendor ops. The site crew called it the sibling split. They joked about it, but the numbers didn't lie. Productivity was up 22% within a month. One afternoon, Paula called an impromptu vendor review meeting. I walked in expecting another spreadsheet rundown. Instead, she had a dry erase board covered in color-coded flowcharts. "What's all this?" I asked. "Bottlenecks," she said, pointing to a section labeled Material Drop Delays. "Some of this is on me," she added. "Too many handoffs, not enough delegation. I'm streamlining it." I raised an eyebrow. "Admitting inefficiency? Who are you and what did you do with my sister?" She smiled, wiped a smudge off the board, and didn't take the bait. That night, we stayed late going over supplier timelines, seating charts for a subcontractor mixer, and even debated who should speak at the groundbreaking event. "You," she said. "Why me?" "Because you're the one who stayed when you didn't have to." She paused, then added, "Even after we told you in every way that matters that you weren't wanted." I stared at her for a long beat. And then I said the only thing that made sense. "I didn't stay for you." She nodded. "I know. But I'm glad you did." For the first time, it wasn't a truce. It was a framework. By summer, Harwood Heights was humming. We'd hit every major milestone 2 weeks ahead of schedule, subcontractors were fighting to bid our next job, and even the city planning office, usually slower than cold tar, was sending us approvals within 48 hours. That kind of momentum doesn't go unnoticed. I started getting calls from guys I hadn't heard from in years. Competitors. Old clients. Even a couple of firms who once laughed when I called myself COO back when I was still just Rick's son. Now they were asking how we turned the ship around. But the bigger shift wasn't on the job site. It was inside the office. For the first time since I came back, I walked into a Monday strategy meeting and didn't feel like a ghost in my own house. The team wasn't glancing sideways to see if Paula approved of what I said. They were asking me what I thought and looking to her for how to make it happen. That was new. She still had her quirks, color-coded tabs for everything, weekly feedback surveys, a whiteboard in her office that looked like a TED Talk exploded. But now those quirks were useful. She wasn't trying to prove she was a leader anymore. She was just leading. And I wasn't carrying everything on my back like some overburdened martyr. I had space. Not just to breathe, but to think. Strategize. Even consider expansion. Then, late one evening after everyone left, Paula knocked on my office door. "I think we should consider opening a second office," she said. "South of Dallas. Smaller, leaner team. Just a pilot." I studied her. Not just the proposal, her. Calm. Focused. No edge of desperation in her pitch. "You really think we're ready for that?" I asked. She shrugged. "We're not the company we used to be." Neither were we. The South Dallas pilot took off faster than either of us expected. By fall, we'd locked in 2 contracts and leased a modest satellite office just outside Waxahachie, enough to test the waters without drowning in overhead. But expansion wasn't the only thing growing. At some point between job site walkthroughs and vendor negotiations, Paula and I stopped talking like adversaries and started sounding like partners. Real ones. It still caught me off guard. Like the day she left a handwritten note on my desk, not an email, not a Slack message, just a short line in her scrawl. "Thanks for letting me learn the hard way. You could have walked, but you didn't. I know what that cost." I sat with that for a long time. Because for years I wanted someone to say those exact words, "I see you. I know what you carried." And now that they were here, they didn't feel like victory. They felt like repair. That Sunday, I drove out to my parents' place. Just me and Dad, on the back porch, him nursing a tumbler of bourbon like always. He didn't say much at first. Neither did I. Then he said, "You and your sister, you're doing good work." I nodded. "We are." You could have let it all burn, he added. Yeah, I said. But that would have made me like you. His mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. That was your legacy, I continued. Build the house, but ignore the rot in the foundation. Pretend loyalty would hold it all together. He stared into his drink. I stood up to leave, but he said one more thing, low, like gravel underweight. I should have given it to you both from the start. You earned it. I looked at him, not as my father, but as a man who once built something great and then forgot who helped keep it standing. I know, I said. Then I left. Because some conversations aren't about closure. They're about choosing not to need it anymore. We never had a ribbon-cutting ceremony. No champagne. No cameras. No social media posts with buzzwords like rebirth or new era. We were too busy actually doing the work. The South Dallas office hit profitability 6 weeks early. One of our old clients, a developer we lost when I walked, called me directly and said, "Heard you're back. Let's talk." I didn't gloat. Just scheduled the meeting, gave the client options, and copied Paula on the follow-up. That's how it worked now. Clean, steady, balanced. There was this moment, small, forgettable to anyone else, where I looked around the main floor of the new office and saw it for what it was, not an extension of the old company, but something entirely rebuilt. Paula and I didn't fix what was broken. We didn't glue it back together. We redrew it. On the fly. In real time. With different instincts and opposite strengths. And somehow it held. I was no longer the workhorse in the shadows. She wasn't the untested favorite daughter. We were a unit. The crew saw it. The vendors felt it. Even our own employees who used to keep their heads down and avoid the family tension started joking that if the Mitchells aren't fighting, something must be wrong. We laughed. Not politely, really laughed. Because they were right. Some families are forged through shared DNA. Ours was rebuilt through ruin. One beam at a time. It's strange how quiet success feels when you stop chasing it for validation. I used to think recognition came in moments, someone handing you a plaque, announcing your title at a company dinner, saying you earned this out loud so everyone could hear. Turns out it sounds more like this. A subcontractor asking Paula, "Should we run this by Ryan?" Or her replying, "Already did. We're aligned." No drama. No power struggle. Just trust. Our biggest win that fall wasn't financial. It was cultural. People wanted to work here again. You could feel it in the hallways. The tension that used to hang over every team meeting like rebar in the wind gone. We weren't patching holes anymore. We were laying foundation. Together. At one point, Paula walked into my office holding an old project binder I hadn't seen in years. "Remember this?" she asked. I looked at the label Eastbound Tower, 2016. Back when I was still under the illusion that loyalty was earned by bleeding quietly. "You were holding the entire company together back then," she said. "And we acted like you were just available." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She set the binder down and said, "I'm not saying sorry again. I'm just saying. I see it now." That meant more than 1,000 apologies. Because the hardest thing to earn back isn't a percentage on a contract. It's credibility with someone who once wrote you off. We'd both changed. Not by accident. Not overnight. By choice. By grit. By standing on level ground and choosing every day to rebuild something neither of us fully deserved but both of us fought to reclaim. The Midtown Civic Center job was ours. No family favors. No legacy strings. Just a tight bid, a solid pitch, and a track record Paula and I built with grit, not goodwill. We stood on the site that morning, side by side in hard hats, watching crews pour the first slab. She handed me coffee and said, "Feels different, doesn't it?" It did. Not because we won. Because we'd stopped trying to prove something and started building something real. I used to think revenge would taste sweet, that watching everything fall apart without me would be enough. But silence doesn't fill a gap. And walking away doesn't always fix what's broken. What did? This. Brick by brick. Decision by decision. Learning how to work without resentment and how to lead without begging. The betrayal never disappeared. Neither did the scars. But I don't carry them like weight anymore. Now, they're just part of the structure. The company thrives. Not on history. Not on blood. But on balance. I don't work for recognition anymore. I work for the build. And this time I'm not asking for a seat at the table. I own it.